All right, so if you're anything like me, you've been totally sucked into the world of HBO's The Gilded Age. I mean, the mansions, the railroad tycoons, the absolute drama between the old money queens and the new money upstarts on Fifth Avenue. It's just incredible. But what's even crazier is that the real story is just as wild. So today, we're going to pull back those velvet curtains and dive into the true stories and the real people who inspired all that on-screen drama. Let's do this.
I want more than that. You know that line from Bertha Russell? It's perfect. It's not just her personal motto, it's the motto of the entire Gilded Age. This was an era of just explosive growth, right? And with that came this ruthless, cutthroat competition and this relentless hunger for more. More money, more power, and the big one, more status.
So it really begs the question, right? Who were these people in real life? Who was the real Bertha Russell, the real George, the real Mrs. Astor, who ruled society with an iron fist? Well, that's what we're here to find out. And I'm telling you, the true stories are often way more dramatic, more ruthless, and honestly, more fascinating than anything a writer could dream up.
Okay, first things first, we need to understand the battlefield. And in 1880s New York, that battlefield was society, with a capital S. This was a world that was fiercely protected by a small group of people we can call the Keepers of the Gate. So the entire era, really the whole show, boils down to one massive conflict: old money versus new money. On one side, you've got families like the Astors. They're basically American royalty, right? Their wealth was inherited, passed down through generations. And on the other side, you have the self-made guys, the Vanderbilts, the Russells of the world, who built these absolutely staggering fortunes from railroads and steel. But to the establishment, they were just crude, vulgar newcomers. And that clash, well, that's the engine that drives this entire story. And sitting at the very top of that old money pyramid was the undisputed Queen Bee, Mrs. Caroline Astor. I mean, both in the show and in real life, her approval was everything. It could literally make or break a family's entire social future. And get this, for a power move, she would receive her guests while sitting on a throne-like chair directly under a massive, imposing portrait of herself. Now that is a statement.
Of course, every queen needs her prime minister, right? And for Mrs. Astor, that man was Ward McAllister. What's so interesting about him is that he wasn't crazy rich himself, but he was the ultimate social strategist. Think of him as her advisor, her enforcer. He was the guy who literally wrote the playbook on who was in and, more importantly, who was out.
So just how exclusive was this world? Well, it all boiled down to one single number: 400. And that number wasn't just random. Nope. It was the exact number of people who could comfortably fit into Mrs. Astor's grand ballroom. And if you weren't on the 400 list, which of course was curated by McAllister, then in the eyes of New York high society, you might as well not exist. But hey, you can't build a big, exclusive gate without expecting someone to try and crash it, right? So, enter the new money titans. These were the people who used their unbelievable fortunes and, frankly, even bigger ambitions to lay siege to the old guard.
In the face of this new money charge is, of course, Bertha Russell. Her real-life inspiration was a woman named Alva Vanderbilt, and let me tell you, she was one of the most formidable forces of nature of the entire era. Just like Bertha, Alva married into a new money railroad family and was immediately given the cold shoulder by high society. But was she going to take that lying down? No way.
Okay, so after being publicly snubbed by Mrs. Astor, Alva didn't just get mad, she got strategic. It was brilliant. Step 1, she built a mansion on Fifth Avenue so ridiculously spectacular that nobody could possibly ignore it. Step 2, she planned the most lavish, over-the-top housewarming ball New York had ever seen. Step 3, she invited everyone who was anyone, except, crucially, Mrs. Astor's own daughter. This move forced Mrs. Astor's hand. She had to swallow her pride and make a formal visit, basically a public surrender, just to get her daughter an invitation. It was a social checkmate. Absolutely brilliant.
And what about Bertha's husband, the ruthless George Russell? Oh yeah, he has a real-life counterpart too, the infamous robber baron Jay Gould. And these guys, they were fascinating because they both had this kind of dual personality. At home, they were loving, dedicated family men. But in the boardroom, they were absolute sharks. Vicious tactics, shady financial deals, and a total disregard for the rules if it stood in the way of them winning.
But listen, not everyone in the old guard was playing by Mrs. Astor's stuffy, formal rules. And that brings us to Mommy Fish. Now, she was technically old money, but she was a total wild card. She was famous for her razor-sharp wit and her absolutely bonkers parties. I'm talking parties with vaudeville acts, even rented elephants. She once threw a birthday party for her dog, and the dog wore a $15,000 diamond collar. You just can't make this stuff up.
But you know, this glittering world of insane wealth and ambition, it had a really dark side. All that relentless pursuit of status and power came at a huge human cost. And that cost was paid in shocking scandals, personal sacrifice, and some really dark secrets.
A perfect example is the architect Stanford White, who you see the Russells hire in the show. Now, in real life, this guy was a genius, one of the most famous architects of his day. But behind that celebrated career, he was hiding a really disturbing personal life that was about to explode into one of the most infamous crimes of the century.
So, here's what happened. It's pretty grim. White assaulted a very young model and actress named Evelyn Nesbit. Later, her millionaire husband, who was completely consumed by jealousy, walked up to White in a packed rooftop theater and shot him dead. The trial that followed was an absolute media circus. They called it the trial of the century, and it unearthed details so shocking that newspapers at the time literally said they were unprintable. And yeah, the price of all this ambition wasn't just paid by the people climbing the ladder. Their kids often paid it too. You see it with Gladys Russell, right? Her life is completely controlled by her mother's social strategy. Well, her story is a direct reflection of Consuelo Vanderbilt. She was the ultimate pawn in her mother Alva's social chess game, a true prisoner in what they called a gilded cage. I mean, how ruthless was Alva Vanderbilt? Get ready for this. When her daughter Consuelo actually fell in love with someone else, someone unsuitable, Alva allegedly threatened to murder the young man herself if he didn't back off, all to make sure her daughter went through with this strategic but totally loveless marriage to a British duke. This stuff goes way beyond party invitations. This was a high-stakes game where people's entire lives were just pieces on a board.
You know, these super rigid moral codes of the time created this whole other class of people, the wealthy outcasts. A great example is the character Sylvia Chamberlain, who's based on a real woman named Arabella Huntington. She had incredible, fabulous wealth, but because of a, let's say, murky past, she was totally ostracized. So what did she do? Barred from their little club, she poured her massive fortune into art, creating one of the world's greatest collections. It just goes to show some doors stayed firmly shut, no matter how much money you threw at them.
Okay, but it's so important to remember this. While the Vanderbilts and the Astors were fighting their little wars in ballrooms, a very different and, you could argue, far more important struggle was happening just beyond their mansions. The Gilded Age wasn't just about the super rich. It was also a time of huge social change, and that change was being driven by some incredibly brave new voices.
And this is where the character of Peggy Scott comes in. Now, while Peggy herself is a fictional creation for the show, she's what we call a composite character. She's a powerful stand-in for the many real, trailblazing African-American women of that time, writers, activists, and pioneers who were fighting a battle for justice and equality. Two of the most important real-life figures from this world are T. Thomas Fortune, who you see as Peggy's editor in the show, and the incredible I.W. Wells, who is a huge inspiration for Peggy's character arc. And what's cool is they were contemporaries, both using the power of journalism to challenge the system and fight for change. And I mean, we're talking about immense contributions here. T. Thomas Fortune was born into slavery and rose to become one of the most important voices for African-American rights in the whole country. And Ida B. Wells, wow. She was an absolutely fearless journalist who literally risked her life to expose the horrors of racial violence, and she would later go on to co-found the NAACP. So when you really look at it, the Gilded Age shows us these two parallel worlds existing at the same time. In one world, you have this fight for social status, for control of the ballrooms, and in the other, you have people like Wells and Fortune fighting for basic human rights, for justice. They were fighting for the very soul of the nation.
So, as you can see, the Gilded Age isn't just a cool historical setting for a TV show. It's really a mirror, reflecting these timeless themes of ambition, class, and the fight for change that are still so relevant. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? 100 years from now, when people look back on our time, who were the public figures, the tech titans, the social media influencers, the activists? Who are they going to be making dramas about?